Cool. Okay, I'm just going to dive in. So welcome to the very first episode of 5 Sparks. This is basically a new series where I'm inviting people that are doing cool creative work to respond to 5 prompts of their choosing in 200 words or less. And I've been personally fascinated by how constraints shape creativity. And so this series is like my nerdy way of exploring that a little bit more through conversations with interesting minds. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Algis Tamosaitis. I first discovered Algis when I was traveling in Japan. I stumbled across his brilliant newsletter, Japan or Die. And not only was I drawn to Algis's direct and lively writing style, but I was also super intrigued by this guy from LA who seemed to possess so much nuanced knowledge about Japanese culture. And his unconventional travel tips have literally transformed my travel experience there and elsewhere. And I knew that I wanted to have him participate in 5 Sparks. So Algis, thanks, mate, for being my inaugural guest and for sharing your 5 Sparks with us as well. And my first question is, what surprised you the most about doing the 5 Sparks?
Well, first, thanks for having me, Harrison. Great to see you again. You provided a good list of questions to choose from, and choosing the questions was challenging in and of itself because, there's a lot of fun questions in there, narrowing it down to 5. And then also I'm reading through the questions. I'm thinking, oh, piece of cake. Let me grab these questions. I'll answer them. No big deal. And then you kind of get under the hood there, and they're quite thought provoking. They really make you reassess how you really feel about something, or you might have thought that you felt about it a certain way for a long time. Do you still feel about it the same way now, currently? And so I actually found it led me to a lot of self-reflection, and it was kind of a fun challenge.
Cool. Yeah. I've no idea what where they come from, how I come up with them, and I've certainly no idea what they're going to do in people's hands and how they're going to respond to them. That's part of the fun of it, I think. Mm-hmm. I really like the idea of giving the same prompt to multiple people actually and seeing how they respond to it, because anyone that's been reading my essays over the past few weeks and months will know that I bang on about this a lot. But I love this idea that thematic prompts like this that are distributed to different people, they let people just really lean into their own unique individuality and express themselves fully as unique individuals. But then it brings their responses together and sort of unifies it in like a common family or a community or a collective. And it's a bit meta, but I think what I like about thematic prompts so much is that it lets people like both be individuals and be part of a collective as well. So I'm super excited to obviously to talk about yours, and also to see if I can get some other people to respond to and start building a little batch of these interviews and these responses, because it's some of the most exciting like art and writing that I can imagine doing.
Yeah, it'll be cool to see where you take this, see where it goes.
Yeah, exactly. Like at the moment, like I don't have a ideal persona in mind. It's just I'm following my curiosity and just whatever interests me. If I think people are doing something interesting and and we have good quality conversations, which you and I do, then I'm just like, you're perfect for it, basically. So yeah, we'll see how it evolves over time. Okay, so my second question is, you've written in your prompts, in your responses, sorry, that you had to learn to work within constraints rather than against them. And that's super interesting to me for all the reasons I just said. So I wondered, could you tell me a little bit more about the role that constraints have played or do play in your creative practice? And this includes not just Japan or Die, but anything else you might be working on.
Okay. As you know already, I came down with a chronic illness several years ago, and I'm not going to get into it too much, but some of the symptoms include extreme exhaustion, brain fog. So sometimes it doesn't affect me as much as I write for some reason when I write, but when I'm speaking, sometimes I'll have to take an extra pause because that word will be just out of reach, which is a very strange feeling for someone who was an English major and grew up reading and writing their whole lives. But it's a limitation that I deal with now. And then I also have a lot of pain and something else called exercise intolerance, which just basically means if I push myself too hard on any given thing, that I pay for it later, possibly not being able to get out of bed for a few days or something like that. And it can be the most minor thing. Like I set out to go run, 3 errands, but I'm like, I feel great today. Let me take care of that 4th thing. I am going to pop over to the post office and do that thing. And that last errand, it's like, no, you pushed it too far. Or I used to be a personal trainer and I had to figure out how to scale back all my workouts now to the most minimum so that I'm still getting something out of it. But if I do one set too many, or if I really, I don't push it to the maximum anymore, because if I do, then my body can't handle that. So the way that shows up now in my work and my writing and, and in the newsletter is I had to figure out something that I could do on my own time. You know what I mean? Like I wake up, I don't know if it's going to be a good day or a bad day, how much energy I'm going to have or not going to have. So I have to be able to work on kind of my own schedule. When I have those moments, I need to seize those moments. And so I had to think of something that could have a flexible structure and still have a way to, be useful and something that I could sustain over a long period of time. I love newsletters. I just love them. I probably am subscribed to like 100. I read probably 100 newsletters a week. And I just thought this is an area that I could contribute something. I thought I had a pretty decent understanding of sort of the genre of newsletters. And I know that's a very broad topic, but so everything from how I designed the newsletter, like how it would look, that it wouldn't be, too much effort for me to, it couldn't be too designed, or else like it's too many things to do. It's evolved over time. And my girlfriend, who's my sort of co-conspirator in this project, has taken upon herself to, improve the design as time has gone on. But initially, just having those 3 topics, I was like, I can handle this indefinitely, as long as I choose a topic that I'm super duper interested in. Because I've seen a lot of newsletters start out, very promising. Like there's a lot of good newsletters out there, and then life takes over. People think it's going to be a piece of cake to write a newsletter every week and publish it. And it turns out to be a lot more complicated and a lot more time than you would ever think. You read a newsletter and you're like, oh, this is great. It took me, a few minutes to read it, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, if it's a really long one. And you're not sitting there thinking like, oh, maybe this person put in 10, 20 hours into this. So just kind of creating that structure for myself.
I want to know more about this structure. So you've got Japan or die. So already that's a constraint. You're talking about the cultural ins and outs of a single country in the world among hundreds of others. So that's a great overarching constraint straight away. You talk about 3 different things in each post. So that's a great constraint. It's not too many. It's not too few. 3 is a magic number, as we know.
Mm-hmm.
You tend to. So I'm just curious. Like, do you have other constraints? Do you have word count? Because I've noticed that some of your things can be some of your 3 points can be short. They can be quite long.
Yeah.
So do you have word counts? Do you have? It feels like you have a limit on sort of like the number of different things you'd write about. So it's like cuisine, art, culture. There's even bits of like sort of infrastructure or transport related things I think have made their way in as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to know on a more granular level, like what other constraints have you knowingly or unknowingly imposed on this that's made it sort of easy or difficult?
Okay, so some of these things are conscious, and some are still sort of unconscious things that, just like your 5 sparks, I'm going to have to go back and analyze. And I don't do any sort of surveys or tests or whatever of, oh, these topics are the most popular. I just kind of decided, like, I would like each issue to have 3 different topics so that when someone opens it, hopefully at least one of those things can resonate with them, right? If you only choose one topic, it's hard because people like to travel for a variety of reasons, or are looking for so many different things in in a newsletter that would talk about Japan is a fairly broad topic. It could be anything from, you could be really into the architecture or the food or skiing or the anime and manga type of stuff, or martial arts or Zen, Buddhism things. Like there's so many, like it has very broad appeal. And so I wanted to have a variety within each newsletter, so that at least my hope is that one of those 3 things will hit for you and you'll find it useful.
Interesting.
So that's kind of with the balance. And then I try to make sure that each issue doesn't have 3 of the same type of, I'm not going to have 3 neighborhoods to go to in one issue. So if it has a neighborhood, the next thing has to be, maybe a cultural thing or a language thing, or, something different. And then the third thing might be a specific type of food or a restaurant to go to, or a custom or habit that is very interesting that I've observed, or, a useful travel technique. So I do have kind of broad categories like that. And I do think of the newsletter in terms of that the first and the third topics are more the main topics, and then the middle one is usually the shortest of the 3.
Interesting. Is that born of a proven like modern framework that you've used in the past, or is it just like people tend to remember the first and the last things? Or
I think it's that, and I don't know. Yeah, people tend to remember the first and the last things, and it just felt appropriate to have the shortest topic just kind of sandwiched in there,
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, like just from a structural point of view, it makes more sense to put the burger between the bun or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. But like, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I interrupted you. I was just going to dig even further into these constraint things. Like, I was wondering about your own creative practice. Like, when you're sitting down to work, like, is there a particular place you like to work? Is there a particular way that you write? Are you like a shitty first draft, get it all out type of guy and then return and edit, or are you a slow and deliberate thinker? Because I know you've worked in copywriting, you've worked in journalism, you're clearly an experienced writer. What's your process for getting things out of your head and then polishing them ready for publishing? What does that look like?
Okay, well, you already hit on something that I do use, and I feel like there's mindset and there's tactics when it comes to what kind of, how you're going to approach writing. And so when I was working in Hollywood, there definitely were things that I learned there that have transitioned to the newsletter genre. And I think they would work for any type of writing, actually. And the first mindset thing I would say is, when I was doing copywriting, I had experiences working in-house at a company that I went into 5 days a week. There's several copywriters in one room. Someone will just walk in or we'll get an email and it's like, okay, today you got to write, the copy for the new Tom Cruise ad, the new, Mission Impossible, whatever, Maverick, something's coming out, or, whatever the new thing. And they're very varied. You might have one that's an action film, one that's a horror movie, one that's a comedy like a SpongeBob or something like that. And so whatever style comes up, you need to be able to tackle it. But most importantly, like, you can't wait for inspiration to hit. Like that, if they say it's due at 2:00, you better write something by 2:00. So the thing that you said of basically giving yourself permission to write badly first. It's really easy to try to be a perfectionist, get every single sentence just right. Oh no, not that word. Hang on, cross it out 10 times. That's not going to cut it, because also in copy, you have to produce a great volume of options. Like it sounds really easy. You're writing like one sentence that goes on a poster sometimes. Yeah, most people can come up with 1 or 2 sentences, like a lot of people that are, writers or English majors or whatever. But it's when they say we need 50. Because
So you do that, and then you'd show someone, and they'd go, "I like those 5. Get rid of those. Go deeper on these," and then you go
yeah,
back to.
yeah, and then you need to come up with even more versions of the 5 or 10 that were their favorites. And
Wow.
a lot of times the first versions are the best because there's only so many ways to sound natural saying certain things. And then when they're like, say this but a different way, and there's just not that much vocabulary for certain words or certain expression, you know what I mean, like certain feelings. So but
Yeah.
it teaches you to look at things from a different angle as well.
Yeah, like at the very least, even if the things you produced after the better ones aren't as good, at least it shows you that the first ones you wrote were good in comparison, and that's
Absolutely.
useful.
Absolutely. It's confirmation that, like, yes, that's the one we should go with. But you have to go down that road as well and explore those other options.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
So that was the thing that you said, where you just give yourself the option, the permission to write something shitty and then rewrite it if you need to.
And what about timing? Do you do Pomodoro or something similar, or do you have a certain time in the week when you're more productive, so you'll do the writing then? How does it work?
Okay. So like I said, I worked both in-house and then I worked freelance as well. And so freelance is very, very different from working in-house. Freelance is you're sitting at home, you get a call, are you available this week? It's whatever. It's today's Friday and we've got a job that's due next Wednesday. Next Wednesday, 2 p.m. You're like, yeah, I'll take it. How much does it pay? What do you need? Blah, blah. Okay, you got it. Hang up. They might have given you a little bit of direction, like, oh, we want it to be kind of like these other films or TV shows, or give it, make it feel dark or uplifting or whatever. And then it's all on you. Nobody is sitting there looking over your shoulder. You could write it at 3 a.m. You could write it in 3 in the afternoon, 8 a.m., 7 p.m., whatever works best for you. So this actually, with my condition of waking up and not knowing exactly how the day's going to go, I have a lot of unpredictability in my life. And so I have to be able to write basically at a moment's notice. Like if I'm like, oh, I feel pretty good right now. Like I might have woken up, felt terrible, had a little coffee, laid back down in bed, just kind of resting. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I feel pretty good right now. I don't want to squander that moment. I have to write right then. And so kind of my tactic there is, I have made writing my top priority. Right. So even if I had planned to do something else that's, important as well, clean the kitchen, go to the gym, run an errand. If I haven't gotten my writing done for the week, which, a newsletter is perfect in terms of having a weekly deadline. At least mine it goes out once a week on the same day. I've kept it mostly to one day. So that's where working freelance prepared me to do that, to be, to meet deadlines. You don't keep working if you don't meet deadlines. Like you could be super amazing at coming up with creative content, but if you don't hit that deadline, the phone's not ringing anymore. So
Can I ask? Can I before moving on? Can I ask a question about editing? Because a lot of the people I hang out with, write with, and coach, it feels to me like their biggest challenges with editing. It's a confusing process. It's unpredictable at best. Even in my own practice yesterday, I was trying to do something and I couldn't do it. And I thought, I've been doing this for 3 years. I've edited so many things. Why can't I get past this? How do you think about editing? It's a bit of a shitty question. Hang on, let me think about what I'm trying to ask. So what is it that you think is so mysterious and difficult to learn about editing specifically?
Oh boy. Editing really does lend itself to falling into the perfectionism trap also. Like at some point you have to put, if you want to be an artist of any kind, a writer of any kind, you have to put your work out into the world. And so you do also with editing have to decide when something is good enough. And, spending an hour, mulling over 1 or 2 words is not a great use of your time, especially for me with limited time, but for anybody really. I mean, so I try to approach editing a couple of ways. I like to look at something with fresh eyes. So if I've written something, right, if I wrote something this morning, I won't edit it today. I'll edit it tomorrow when my brain is fresh again and when I'm slightly more removed, because I'm also a little more like when you first write something that, oh, that's my baby. It's, oh, I love it. It's this and that, and I mean, sometimes, it's not a great draft or whatever, but it's still yours, and editing can feel painful and critical and stuff like that. You have to separate that, and then you have to go into that other mode, because when you're editing, you're making it better. So I tend to overwrite a little bit. When I'm first writing it, I give myself also permission to overwrite, to be like, yeah, I know this is going to be too long. This is too much. Let me get all the ideas out so that I'm not stuck on them later, so they're not clogging up my thought process. So I didn't miss anything. And I might add stuff later. Oh shit, I can't believe I didn't think of this other tip that should go in here. Like if it's a travel thing. So yeah, I tend to like authors that write short, like Hemingway. So I try not to get too flowery with things. And you saw on the Five Sparks that one of my influences is Jonathan Gold, and he was an outstanding. Well, he started out actually as a music critic and then became a food critic. He wrote very creatively, but also could be very succinct and very, very precise in what he was writing about. Like, he didn't want to have all the ooh, this is so delicious. It was more like, the shell was dark brown and crispy, but as you bit into it, it flaked away and the inside has soft, gooey caramel, something like that, like very descriptive, but of the actual thing versus just his impression of it.
Showing, not telling, essentially.
Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah. I don't know. When I'm editing, every moment I'm thinking about who is reading this and what are they getting out of this.
So you've got a reader in mind when you're writing.
Absolutely. And I don't want to give them like more to read. We're all busy, right? Like, I don't want to make something longer than it has to be. I want to get to the point. It's real easy to fall in love with writing and leave in things that like, oh, that's so great. I love this. But like, what is it benefiting that particular piece really that much? Or is it just you stroking your ego because you came up with a cool combination of words that sounds cool in that moment, but doesn't like add specific value to that particular piece?
Yeah, it kind of makes me think about the artist the writer as an artist versus the writer as a designer. Maybe this is a nice like analogy that I've thought about quite a lot and has been quite helpful. I think if you tend, like me, I tend to be more of the like artist writer mindset. So it's like, I'm gonna write about what I want. I'm gonna get lost in this process. I'm gonna try and make myself laugh or surprised or whatever. And the trap I fall into is not thinking enough about the other people on the other end that are supposed to be reading this. It's like, what do they actually want? And I think there are people out there that naturally lean more towards the designer writer mentality of like they're constantly thinking about their audience, and it feels like more of like a service that they're contributing. So and I think about that quite a lot, and I get caught. I think
it's a balance, and you shouldn't lose that thing of where you're writing for yourself. I think it's really important to have like I'll throw little things in there that like, and I know are kind of just for myself, but it makes it fun and it makes you want to keep going as well. Or I'll have an article that's about, going to izakayas and that I think they're great. And there might just be a couple little Easter eggs in there for the person that's reading carefully of, go to this area or go to that area specifically, or here's a link to some other thing that, I don't know, 80-90% of people might not notice or follow up on, but the ones that do will get a little extra bonus there. So I'm not trying to just like craft it for, oh, this is just, I have to, appeal to the average general person. You know what I mean?
Is it the same person you have in mind each time you're writing a newsletter?
So when I came up with the concept of Japan or Die, part of it was based on the fact that, so first of all, I've lived in Japan, worked in Japan, lived in 3 different cities, worked in 2 of them, traveled there. I don't know. I've lost count now, almost 20 times, I think, in the past 2 decades or so. And so what happened is all my friends, whenever they would decide to go, it's like, oh, can you help me with my itinerary? What are the must-dos? What are this? What's that? And the internet is like the Wild West right now. You can find any information you want to, but also like having somebody that's just a few steps ahead of you. And there are certain things that are so sort of normal and subtle to somebody that either lives in Japan or like either an expat or a local, it doesn't matter. But going to a store that regular people like to shop at, that you might not seem initially that overwhelmingly cool for a tourist, or that you would just walk past, right? But like, you should definitely go do this tiny little thing. You'll really enjoy it. Or in the fall and the winter, they have sweet potatoes at all the markets. And you saw these? Did you have one?
I've had the one. They're just dry. They're baked.
Yeah,
they're sitting in the oven in the supermarkets. You can buy one.
Yeah,
50 pence or something.
It's
so good.
Yeah. And it's such like an understated tiny little treat that I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I haven't read any of the major guidebooks in a long time, but I'd be a little bit shocked if it would be in there that it's like, you should go to the market or the convenience store and look out for these little stands that have the heated sweet potatoes. And actually there aren't a lot left, but there are some old school, like, people that drive around in trucks and have a bell like an ice cream man, but it's a sweet potato truck.
Love it.
It's so cool, but they're harder to find now. I don't know what's happening. Everything is modernizing, whatever, but like sometimes you can come across those, and that's a really fun experience as well.
One of the things that me and you talked to me about it, and it stayed with me in the past, is the difference between like fish content and rod content, right? So like there are certain things that we can share in blogs and newsletters that give people a fish, they give people some temporary delight that they can enjoy. But then there's other content where it's like you're literally giving them a rod that they can use for their whole life.
Yeah.
And one of the best things that I learned from your newsletter was when you're searching Google Maps for food, don't search in English, because then all the reviews and basically all the activity is going to be is going to have been uploaded by either people from England or people speaking English that are just traveling there, basically tourists.
Yes.
And what you said was search, if you want soba or if you want a particular dish from Japan, search for it in the Japanese language.
Yes.
Because then you'll find restaurants and just opportunities that are being discussed and reviewed by locals. And this was a game changer. And dude, I found like, honestly, I still think about it. I found like I had the best soba noodles I've ever had in my life, and it was the opposite way down the road from where I was usually walking from my apartment. There was nobody else in there. There was just me. It felt like a place that nobody would ever find. I mean, I looked, and it was game changing soba noodles, and I was like, wow, this is true rod content, because I can use this anywhere now. We were just doing it here in Peru.
Oh, good.
Things in Spanish, right? So yeah, dude, I mean, I don't know what my question is here. Just, it's more of an acknowledgement that that's an example of some of the super specific and genuinely useful content that you're sharing in your newsletter. And I wonder, like, where you get it from. How do you have so much to say about Japan? Like, how do you have so much knowledge of it? I guess underneath this is the question, how much research are you doing, or is it just coming from your own personal experiences?
I would say 90% is from my personal experience. I was the tourist that went there and didn't know what he was doing the first time, and didn't know about all, there are a lot of Japanese foods that have made it to Western countries that we're familiar with. And then there are plenty that for whatever reason, just, I don't know if they didn't translate or they didn't make it over. It's like, there's not a lot of okonomiyaki places outside of Japan, at least not in the United States.
For people that don't know, that's the kind of Japanese sort of omelet, isn't it? It's fried and scrambled eggs on a hot platter with all kinds of toppings that you can think of added.
Yeah, sometimes it's described as a pancake. Sometimes it's like an omelet. They use cabbage and flour and egg, and it doesn't fit perfectly into a Western category of a food. You know what I mean? And it's a really great experience to have it for the first time, because how many, I don't know, once you're an adult, once you hit a certain age, it's like, how many new foods are there in the world to try? So it's always fun when you find one that's a little bit unique. But I didn't even know that existed the first time I went to Japan. And I'm not sure if I ended up having it or not. Now, the first time I went, the internet wasn't what it is now. There's a lot more information out there. But even with the small things like the sweet potato that we were talking about, like, I do think on that cold day when you're wandering around, you're not super hungry, but you're a little bit tired, you need a little boost, your hands are cold, going and getting one of those things, it's just, there's a feeling of that like, that hige, that warmth, that comfort, that like, oh yeah, this is perfect. This is just what I needed in this moment. And I don't know, I man, for the cultural stuff, I've had so many conversations with friends that I've made in Japan. I used to have a best buddy who owned an izakaya, and one of my coworkers and I would go there several times a week. It was just a few blocks from work and from my apartment. And, he spoke some English. I was learning Japanese. So we had our little mishmash of English and Japanese, and learning different expressions and learning that the way you communicate things is different. And I like to spread that stuff. I like people to, like you said, just kind of be able to have information that they can run with, that they can just take and do their own thing. I think Japan is a great place for that. It's a very safe country. There's such a strong culture of treating people well, treating foreigners well, because you're representing your country. You're not just like, oh, this is, someone came in for lunch and I'm a little tired, and so here's some food or something like that. Like, it's really ingrained that, like, you want anyone who's come as a guest to leave with a good impression. And this translates to all kinds of stuff. I mean, like, when you watch like World Cup and stuff like that, and the Japanese fans that have traveled to wherever the World Cup is, after the game, they clean their section.
Yeah, I saw that.
You've seen that, right? So
yeah,
it's amazing, right? Like, other countries, like, whatever, don't they have people that do that? Like, what are you doing? Like, let's get out of here. But Japanese people are like, no, because this represents us, and this represents our team, and this represents our country. So anyhow, I think even when I was a personal trainer, I never wanted to be the personal trainer that was just there, like, yelling at you and counting reps. I actually wanted the people to learn how to stay fit and healthy for themselves. Like, I was even okay with, like, if, like, they learned it and then they didn't need me as frequently. Not that I want people to not need me for the newsletter, because I'm trying to add new things and more useful things as it progresses. And I want to go, much deeper, but it's like, so I think another sort of very useful tactic or hack for any country is, every country has like influencers going there now and videotaping everything, and go on Instagram or TikTok or I guess Facebook, I don't know. But if it's foreigners and they're just going for like a week or two, like, did they really find this is the best sushi place in Tokyo? It's like, there's like 200,000 restaurants, at least 2,000 of them are sushi places, maybe more. What, you tried 3 or 5, and now you're saying this is the best one in Tokyo? That's really, I don't know.
I'm dubious about this mentality of the best. I think it just misses a much more important point about diversity of experience. Like once you go above a certain level of quality, which let's face it, most of us today are lucky enough to live in a world where we're surrounded by quality food wherever we are. Like once you go above a certain quality, it's no longer about like the best sushi. It's like it's about the experience, right? Like where can I eat sushi today that's really different, and what makes it different? Is it the staff? Is it the chef? Is it the chair? Like that to me, that's what travel's all about. And so I'm always a bit skeptical when I see these leaderboards of, especially in a place like Japan, where I can't think of anywhere else that on the whole takes their food as seriously as a nation.
It's definitely one of the top food cultures, Japan, Mexico, probably France, Italy, Thailand, maybe, India. There are certain food cultures that are so exceptional, but the standard of food is so high, and the opportunity to go have and create your own unique experiences and your own Japan without having to follow in somebody's footsteps other than some guidelines. Right? Like, I don't know. It's a good place to just explore, to let yourself discover, to let the day unfold, to not know exactly every single beat that you're going to hit when you wake up.
Yeah, right? we've talked about this a little bit. The kind of do I just follow Google Maps to that restaurant and that museum and that park and call it a day, or do I just wander? And like there are certain places that make wandering easier and more rewarding. And like I agree, Japan's one of those places where, because it's so safe, because it's so diverse in its offerings, and also because the buildings, like in England or in European cities, most of the commerce is at ground level. Most of the shops, restaurants, things to do. Anything above that is just, it's like it's either residential or it's off limits. It's occupied by companies and businesses that are like anonymous. In Japan, it's not like that, right? You can, like, every building invites you in up the stairs, up the escalator, 15 floors, and on each floor there's stuff to explore. And it really is the only place that I've ever been where I felt like it's a playground of like labyrinthine corridors and doorways and portals, and because it's so safe and welcoming, you can venture down them. So I think this is a tension that all travelers that we all face. Do we follow Google Maps or do we just wander? And I think you have to have a bit of both, but I lean more towards the let's just wander and see where the day takes us. And I think that's been like eroded by tech and everybody's reliance on Google, it's a massive shame.
My mother was a travel agent when I was growing up for maybe the first 12 years of my life. And this was well before the internet and all that stuff. And you'd go to the travel agency and they'd have like some pamphlets and, a few little recommendations. Maybe you had a friend that had gone to this town or a relative, and you had like a tiny little list of tips of things to do, unless you signed up for one of these. And I went on some tours with my parents that I still have nightmares about, where you're just like, we're in the bus, we're in Frankfurt, now we're going to go to Dusseldorf, and they're going to take us to some food hall that can serve 50 people. And then they're going to take us to the gift shop that the gift shop has a deal with the tour company. And it's just such a sanitized version of the company, right? Or of whatever country it is. Yeah. And I know that I saw parts of France, Germany, and Switzerland like that. And it's just like, it's like a Disneyland of those countries. If you're just doing that sort of tour, now you can put together your own tours. You can hire a travel agent or something like that. But in Japan, there is so much opportunity. I wrote about luck surface area. I think to create your own luck, to have these amazing experiences where you can go into places and people will be curious. You'll stand out. People will be curious. Why did you choose this place? Why are you not in Shibuya and Shinjuku? Why are you here in this neighborhood that's more just like a neighborhood where people live? And like, they're just like, what is going on? And then instantly they're approaching you. You don't even have to be some kind of amazing conversationalist or super outgoing person. And they also, the same thing, they want you to have a great opinion of their country. And now they're telling you a bunch of places to go to. And they're not like, oh, well, you should go see, Tokyo Tower, and you should go to the zoo, and you should, it's like, no, you should go to this tiny neighborhood you've never heard of and go have sushi at this one restaurant because they always get it fresh from the market every morning, but it's still reasonably priced. And it's not like celebration sushi. It's just like good, you could go there once a week sushi.
Yeah, I'm curious. Do you have any readers in Japan?
I do have some. I don't know how many, but every now and again I'll see that somebody's subscribed from Japan, and sometimes they have a Japanese last surname, which is also interesting. I'm like, well, there's plenty of Americans that have Japanese surnames as well. I went to school with plenty of people in high school who were Japanese Americans,
And do you have a content backlog? Like you already have a ton that you've written, they're ready to go out on, or do you work week by week? Like
so yeah, it's been my goal to get ahead, but sometimes when my symptoms get really bad, I'll have gotten ahead a few weeks, several weeks, and then I literally can't do anything for a few weeks, and then I'm just like swimming to keep my head above water to get the next week's episode out. Next week's issue.
Do you think there's a limit to the number of things you can write about?
That's a good question. I think Japan in and of itself is pretty deep waters, culturally, food wise, areas, things to do. I think it would be hard to run out of things to write about.
I agree, because you could even start looking at things from, perspectives, or, there's so many things, right? We could resurface old content that was popular, like we talked about, and give it a reframe. Or I think you're right. I think it feels like one of those things where, because you're so uniquely you and you're ever changing, and because you've chosen a country that's just offers so much, I can't see there being a limit to the stuff you're writing about on Japan or Die, personally. And there's an optimistic thing in there as well. Like, I don't want it. I don't want you to stop writing about it, because it's such a fascinating place. Like, we've been there 3 times. I have to say, I talked about leaderboards, and I don't like saying I have a favorite song or a favorite country, but look, we've been back to Japan 3 times. We still talk about it. My friend Matt came to visit me for a 1 week while we were there. He ended up extending his stay to 5 weeks, then to 3 months.
Wow.
He met a girl. He's come back to England. He's just got a visa for a year, and he's going back over there in June just to live there indefinitely.
That's fantastic.
This is the power of the place.
Yeah.
So in the interests of constraints, which is what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
With this, I'm thinking, let's try and round this out now. So I'm curious to know what's next for you in Japan or Die. Do you have any ideas cooking that you've not tried yet? Are there any particular topics you wanting to tackle that you're finding either challenging or exciting?
I think that's a great question. I think so. I've been trying to get ahead with the issues that come out, so that I can produce some very useful kind of tools for people to just get more out of their trip, travel better. I'd like to get some itineraries out there. I would, I'm working on a very easy to access mini language guide specifically for chatting with people in an izakaya setting, the Japanese pub setting. So this is not like asking for directions or, learning the days of the month or months of the year or,
pub
stuff
talk.
like that. It's just small talk and pub talk. Yeah.
Pub talk. I love it.
And that's, I think, so those things. And then also basically a restaurant guide that would be focused on all these places that I've found and surfaced and you know, people have told me about that are not generally featured in Western media. Right? Like, just so people have options and starting points for their adventure that they can then customize to what they like to do.
Yeah, I can tell you, as someone that travels full time at the moment, the desire for good quality recommendations for things that are off the beaten track, that are not in the Lonely Planet guides, that are not just at the top of Reddit threads like these. There's a massive desire for that sort of stuff, and I don't know if it's possible to sate that desire all the time. But and I'm every place we go, you know, I'm kind of confused. I feel like I have to start again. Like, okay, well, where do we find? It's like each country I'm lucky enough to go to, I almost think to myself, who's the Algis of this country, right?
Oh,
Is there a person writing about Lima, Peru, in the same way that you are? Admittedly, I've not done tons of research to find it, but I haven't found it. And so I just want, I guess I just want to say, like, I do think that your blog is much needed for people that like to do things, like to think for themselves, like to try different things off the beaten track and not necessarily live such a templated experience when they're traveling.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And I do tell people that that's a good hack, is to find a person that you relate to, like you find, you know, comfort in their writing. You're like, oh, I think I agree with this person's mindset. And if they specialize in that, then you get a much faster intro to that. One of my earliest trips to Japan, I think it might have been my second or third trip, I was able to convince a friend of mine, a college friend who had lived in Japan for 2 years, to meet me there. And so that was my real introduction to, like, okay, here's Japan through the eyes of the old hand, the expert, the expat, you know, and that changed everything completely, from tourist to, you know, I mean, I'm still a tourist when I'm, you know, traveling there, but just experiencing it in a different way, not being afraid of different things, you know, like, you just have to put yourself out there. Those experiences they're readily available for anyone that's willing to just step out of their comfort zone a little bit, maybe.
And you're going to be in Japan this year. I'm just thinking, if anyone's watching this and they're in Japan, or they're going to Japan, and maybe they want to get in touch with you or whatever, is that something you're open to? People reaching out and just saying hi?
It's something that I would be open to. Absolutely.
Cool. When are you roughly going to be there? What sort of dates?
Well, I'm taking some friends on a tour at the end of June and then into July. So that would be the time frame. Cool. I don't have the end date set yet. That's still flexible.
It's always good to keep flexible exit date when you're in Japan, because it can you just end up staying there. All right, final question. Thanks for doing this, by the way. It's been
thank you for having me.
It's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I hope other people find it interesting as well. Where can people find you and your work?
Well, basically, it's japanordie.beehive.com, because I was like, what's the point of upgrading to my own thing right now? I don't know. I'm really proud of what I built with the newsletter, and I had promised myself that I would do it for at least a year to see how things are going. And it's really funny. Today is the 15-month anniversary to the date. It launched January 11th of 2024. And from 20 of my friends reading it to 2,000 people reading it now.
Great.
In a year, a little over a year, you know.
That's fantastic.
And so I don't know. That's it. japanordie.beehive.com.
Cool, man. All right, thanks. I'm gonna hit stop on this. We can carry on chatting a little bit.
Sounds good.